Hey there, guys. All right, today we are watching a video that popped up on my recommended feed, and this is The Myth of the 1950s by Brit Monkey. I have no idea what to expect. My assumption is that we are going to be talking about how, especially nowadays, it seems that there are a lot of people that talk about the 1950s as this wonderful time period, which it was not. um... uh, I'm curious as to really how the 1950s got this reputation. I think, and my guess is as to why the 1950s are viewed the way that they are, is that they sit in between two very societal upheaval decades, right? The 1940s, half of that is spent with the world at war, right? And then 5 years, right? 10 years of big societal change happening with World War II across the world, right? Societal and traditional global powers changing all in the span of the 1940s, really, right? Britain and France were essentially the number one. And by the end of it, it's the USA and the Soviet Union are the now definitive powers of the world. Empire in the traditional sense is failing, and we are moving into neo-imperialism with the 1940s. The 1960s sees Vietnam and some of the highest highs of the Cold War. We see, like, in the USA, we have the hippie movement. We have various and equal rights movement happening in the United States on a massive scale, like unseen before. And so then you have the 1950s, which were nothing really happened there. I mean, certainly things that happened there, right? But I mean, I think Emmett Till was murdered in the 50s. I don't think he was killed in the 40s. But I mean, so that did lead to some racial tensions. But, like, nothing that really ends up defining the decade, right? The 1950s has things going on that don't really come to any sort of size as to define the decade, unlike the 60s or unlike the 40s. 50s are just kind of there. I mean, the Forgotten War, Korea is in the 50s. And it's the Forgotten War. So that's kind of my perspective on why the 50s are so, and specifically remembered fondly by people that look like me, white, and especially white men. Right, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop yapping. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Thank you, Industrial Society, for saving us from this, sarcastically declares one internet post featuring a picturesque view of the Swiss Alps.
Did Tolkien tweet that? I bet it was J.R.R. Tolkien. I bet he tweeted that. He was still alive at the time. Twitter was still around. It was around in the 50s, wasn't it?
Can you believe people used to afford a suburban home, a car, 3 kids, a holiday, and college, all on the income of one guy? What happened to society? Asks the nostalgics. Reject modernity, embrace tradition, says the 16-year-old teenager in Missouri, posting a picture of 2 people standing in front of a power line. Oh, medieval peasants had more free time and holidays than people today, proclaims another, to over 117,000 likes. Hey pal, there are billions of people in the world today who live the lives of medieval peasants, and they clearly don't work fewer hours than we do. This kind of talking point is part of today's digital zeitgeist, from across a spectrum of viewpoints and age groups. And I know it's not all people, most people know we've never had it so good. This video is for the folks who genuinely believe that life was better in the good old days. Happier, more virtuous. We didn't have as many nice things, but
Pay attention to the skin color in these older videos.
everything made sense. The outfits, the buildings, the social cues, people being more friendly than they used to, people being more religious, more public esteem. Ultimately, they might say, we must return to tradition and a domestic, conservative way of living. And I can easily dismiss all of that as bullshit by saying, you can already do that. You can go and live a pastoral farmsteading life and pretend you're a medieval peasant. It's not illegal. There are many people today who live as if it was the 1950s or the 1880s.
I'm sorry, that's embarrassing.
You don't have to advertise it to the world. What separates you from the Amish is that they're actually devoted. They actually live the life that you purport to want. And when they get asked to explain what made this bygone era so great, it's always about what people didn't have, as if things were better because they were worse. Oh, we didn't always have smartphones, we had to talk to each other. We didn't have central heating, and we were happier for it. No, you fucking weren't. Back in the 50s, less than half of British households had a bathroom, and people hated it. With one newspaper saying it was disconcerting that so many people in a civilized country were stuck with the bleak alternative of a portable bath. Most houses didn't.
I love what's also cool is you can look at those same words being applied here to a toilet, to the bath, and see what those adjectives are being used for today, right? Right, we have it so much better. Now, of course, things could still continue to improve, and they should. Our goal should be to continuously improve as people, right? We should not be looking back at the time and be like, oh, things were better because we didn't have that. No, it's stupid. Stop that. We should be always striving to provide more. We have the means. We have the means of production to do it. It's just the capitalists that are preventing us because the billionaires do not want to lose their power and influence on society.
Didn't even have an indoor toilet. It was in the shed at the bottom of the garden. Many people look back on this time as a golden age of social conformity and family values, before the sexual, secular, artistic revolution ruined everything that was important to them. Others look back on it as the high point of real proper jobs, in industry, high wages, secure wages, and they were unionized. Wealth disparities was at its smallest ever in
Okay. Ooh, I want more information on this graph, though. What I want to see, what I specifically want to see, I also want to see these graphs, adjusted for, race, right? I want to see income inequality for whites, and maybe we'll even split this into gender as well, so we have shit ton of graphs. Because I'm curious, I want to see the like income inequality for black men in the United States from the same time period in comparison to again, still the elites, not necessarily not like elite black men, because I think there would be very, very few in the 50s, if any. Right? Because now I'm probably wording this very horribly to explain the argument that I am trying to make, because I'm not good at numbers. But like what I'm suspecting we would see here is we would see a more for people of color, we would see a more a higher straight line of income inequality. Right? Because of segregation. And then I am curious if you were to then adjust this for white men, if this income inequality on the either sides of the blue would be lower. I'm curious if that would also turn into a more stable, straight sort of line. Now, of course, there's still going to be ups and downs, right? Especially in the 30s here, right? We see that. But I mean, like, I wonder if these extremes here on either side of the blue zone would become lower here. Okay, I think I'm explaining it better as I'm getting along. So, like, my theory is, without the information presented, just going off of um, the contextual information I know of the age, my guess for people of color is that this blue, their inequality would be a bit higher, whereas for white, most specifically white men, um, the either sides here would would become closer to the blue. Um, Now, of course, that is not saying that it's perfect, right? But we should still be striving. And there's gonna be someone on the internet that's too stupid to understand like the context and shit that I'm trying to say. Whatever.
History. And sometimes it isn't even political. There are countless Facebook groups full of older generations commemorating many of the banal complexities of the mid-century. Everything from rotary phones to bin
Why
men.
the fuck would you want a rotary?
Oh, god damn it, they made the bin men woke. However, thanks to the wonders of historical archives, we can paint an accurate picture of normal life in the 1950s, untainted by nostalgia and distortion by popular culture.
Ugh. Suburbia is so hideous. I say as someone that, well, do I? Yeah, I live in Well, I don't really live in a. I don't live in a zoning that's like this.
Houses. Nobody wants to live in a pod, but houses in the 1950s were less than half as big as houses of today. Look at this ad for a luxury home. It's pretty average or even quite cramped by today's standards, and while it was certainly cheaper, don't even think about renovating it. Some houses were built with special caverns in the bathroom walls where you would simply dump all your used razors and then forget about them, leaving the next person to deal with all those rusty blades.
Huh.
If you want to knock down that wall, I hope you have your tetanus vaccine. That's even if you could afford the luxury of your own home. The white poverty rate was double back then, and the black
He's getting into the crap that I was. Yes.
poverty rate, well,
I think my educated guessing was correct. I know things.
you can already get. Cars. Cars at the time were death traps. Car physics were not well understood. They thought if you keep adding bulk to it, the car will just absorb the crash. Instead, it just transferred all the impact force into the frail meat puppets inside. Cities. Littering in the street wasn't seen as socially taboo until the 1970s environmentalist movement. There were no regulations on air pollution, so factories spewed out as much coal and smoke dust that it often blocked out the sun in highly industrial towns like
I love this video already.
or in London, where over just 4 days in December 1952, smog killed roughly 12,000 people and made 100,000 seriously ill. I will give the nostalgists one victory though. Theft and burglary rates were incredibly low in the 1950s compared to today. Although that's because nobody had anything worth stealing.
Hold on, let me see that graph there. Okay, so I'm not entirely. I'm assuming the numbers here mean like 60 per 1,000. 60 right? 60 crimes per 1,000 people. I think is usually like then like I think 1,000 is typically the statistic the number used. Like one person robbed for every 1,000 or whatever the low. I don't know. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. So like out of every 1,000 people, 100 will get crimed or whatever, right? But also what we want to see here, like what's important, right? So we have rising income, but also we do have, as we saw from the previous graph, we also see an increase in income inequality, especially as we get to here. But, right, we look at 2010 and we saw that the income inequality was really high. But now we see that the general trend is that we are going down. So, like, the income inequality part, super sucky. but like we're trending down. This is a good thing. Like we should be cheering for this, not looking back at this and be like, oh, no, it's because we had fucking nothing, especially in the UK in the 1950s, because the UK is recovering from war. You are not, your wartime recovery was not isolated to the last 5 years of the 1940s. You are spending probably the next 2 decades recovering from World War II, right? Because we see the British colonial empire start to dissipate in the 60s en masse, right? That's when we really start to see it because of wartime cost. Oh, right. The UK here, y'all got nothing to rob because you're all poor from needing to recover from a deadly war. So yeah, bucks.
Although that's because nobody had anything worth stealing. Work. The average American man worked about 300 more hours per year than today, and he didn't even get paid more for all this toil. Adjusting for inflation, the median salary in 1957 was slightly lower than it is today. He isn't getting home until 7:30, and he's...
Now, I do believe, now I will, I'm curious if he will talk, I mean, we still have a lot of time. I do think that, the average grocery cost does take up, I do believe it takes up more money than, what it would have in this time period. Now, of course, we also need to talk about the sheer variety that we now have available to us in the modern age does change things a little bit, but still, cost of groceries has gone a bit insane. So I wonder if he will talk about that. And also this video, right, he using numbers from 2022, the second quarter of 2022, and then 2023 inflation, right? I'm watching this at the beginning of 2025. I think he uploaded this. He either uploaded this in 2020, early 2024, or late 2023, something. So, right, that does change like a lot. Prices have changed, have gone. I mean, they've started to stabilize, but they are still rising pretty quickly. In the last year. So
going straight to bed after beating his wife. The idea of a gorgeous, stay-at-home, submissive wife is a load of nonsense too. 1 in 3 married women still had jobs, which is half the rate it is today, true, but it's certainly a large chunk of women.
Yep.
Women who were relegated to being housewives often found it boring and unfulfilling.
I ask myself why I'm so dissatisfied. I've got my health, fine children, a
23 years old, so young.
lovely new home, enough money. My husband has a real future as an electronics engineer. He doesn't have any of these feelings. I wake up and there's nothing to look forward to.
I've tried everything women are supposed to do. Hobbies, gardening, being very social with my neighbors. I begin to feel I have no personality. I'm somebody who can be called on when you want something. But who am I?
I seem to sleep so much. I don't know why I should be so tired. It's not the work. I just don't feel alive.
Ooh.
Nor was everybody pious and morally pure.
And I think what we also can point to there, right? You have a bunch of old folks saying that no one wants to work these days. No, people want to work. We just want to do the job that we would feel most fulfilled by, right? Like, I'm gonna be here's the simple truth. I'm a terrible, like, I can do the job, but I'm not gonna do it all that good. Like, I can do like most jobs. I do them fine, but when I'm not gonna be happy really doing any job aside from the job, really like the one. There's like 2 jobs that I can see myself genuinely feeling fulfilled by, and just being happy and satisfied with, as long as I can just make enough to have a living with it, right? I don't need to be uber successful in the field that I want to be in, which is writing, right? You guys watch my videos, you know I want to be a writer. I would be content if I were a university professor on writing, a writing professor at a university, in fiction writing, and publishing on the side and making enough to live with that. Like, I don't need my stories to be like New York Times bestsellers. That's not what my motivation is. I just enjoy writing that much, and that's where I feel also that I can contribute the most to society as a human being, right? People want to contribute to society in what they feel is the most meaningful way. There are some people out there that can be a stay-at-home mother and stay-at-home wife and feel satisfied by that because they'll engage themselves with their local community, with their kids, get their kids to socialize or whatever with the community or whatever, right? There are people that can feel, and they should be able to pursue that. If that's what they want, can go for it, right? A family should be able to be supported by one income earner personally. I believe one person in the household should be able to make enough money to provide for their family. But right, so like if someone wants to be stay at home, hell yeah, let them do it. And then there are, right, then other people are like, no, I want to have this job. This is the job that will make me feel satisfied and happy, live a long life, and that then contributes to society in multiple ways, right? Happier people also, if they want kids as well, but they want to keep working their job while having kids. Kids will be happier because guess what? They have a parent that feels satisfied in what they do. They're happy, which leads to the children being happier, right? Right? It's just like we should be fighting for that future, but the billionaires don't want, the people in power fucking don't want us to do that.
Sure. As early as 19...
And then there are some people that are genuinely, I feel like, brainwashed by the people in power to not want that. Won't say what side, but...
39, a minority of Britons believed in life after death, indicating that maybe people back then weren't as religious as we think. 1950s cinema gives the impression that everyone acted as upstanding, sexless, clean-mouthed citizens all the time. But that was just
No, some of those movies you watch and you're like, damn, they're horny.
Voluntary regulation by the big studios. For every grand cinema showing the latest Hollywood romance devoid of sex, there were many more seedy dive cinemas showing low-budget, raunchy sexploitation movies. Soho in London was internationally famous for its adult theatres and strip clubs. Alfred Kinsey, a controversial sex researcher, found in 1953 that around half of white women and 68% of college student white men in America had engaged in premarital intercourse.
Yes.
Swearing, also pretty common. Here's some outtakes from old Hollywood films where the actors mess up their lines.
I have my fingerprints taken, my hand asked and married. The things has happened to... Son of a...
What's wrong?
And I love the transatlantic accent just poofing, vanishing.
I am not lost. Oh, Christ, son of a bitch.
Fuck, 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 fuck. I don't know the lines.
She knows the words, though.
You know what I'm going to do for you?
I have a hunch now.
I didn't die, and I haven't stayed away, and I want that child. Well, you're not going to have it, you son of a bitch.
And that's just the high-profile actresses who were in the workplace. You can imagine the kind of foul-mouthed language used by everyday people in casual settings. Having heard all this, the nostalgic may look back even further. If the 1950s weren't as conservative as I thought, well, the true good old days must have been the 1920s, or the 1800s, the Middle Ages. But it's all a race to the bottom. because conservatives have always been talking about the good old days. In
Yep.
the 1930s, one English newspaper reported, "There is no period in history in which young people have given such emphatic utterance to a tendency to project that which is old and wish for that which is new," with another blaming parents themselves having frequently failed in their obvious duty to teach self-control and discipline to their own children. In 1939, a Gallup poll revealed that 62% of Americans thought that life was better in the era of horse and buggy. America in the 1890s had a
We've always been stupid.
standard of living comparable to modern-day Malawi, the poorest country in the world. Life expectancy at the turn of the 20th century was around 52 in the US and UK, and a bit lower on the continent. There are only 2 countries in the world today with a life expectancy that low: Nigeria and Chad. But apparently even this was too cushy for people in the 19th century. In 1832, Andrew Jackson proclaimed that under his leadership, the United States was reviving that devoted patriotism and spirit of compromise which distinguished the sages of the Revolution and the fathers of our Union. Evidently, things were better 50 years ago, in the 1770s, the 18th century. But even in the 18th century, people complained that young noblemen who, in direct opposition to good character, hurry through life in one invariable round of debauchery.
I love that he's going back and back and back. Oh, this video is great.
Ultimately saying that, despite having attained maturity, young men are naught but emaciated. I mean, look at this guy. He's wearing stockings, a wig, makeup. He rides horses. Gay! Inevitably, Uncle Richard will ruin Christmas dinner in the 2040s by saying, "Life was so much better in the 2010s. We must return to tradition when marriage was between 2 humans, not these robosexuals indoctrinating our kids."
I mean, fuck robots.
We all know by now that despite its flaws, modern life is superior to anything that came before, in nearly every single way. And in that case, why do we have literally thousands of old people celebrating old butter knives, and even more young people complaining about mechanized agriculture? I think I know why. The 2 Germanys reunited 34 years ago, but those who lived in East Germany still haven't given up their nostalgia for the old communist system. A majority of East Germans agree with the statement, East Germany had more good sides than bad sides, there were some problems, but life was good there. Yet at the same time, 83% of East Germans approved the transition to a market economy, and the number of East Germans saying they are satisfied with their life increased by 44 percentage points from 1990 to 2019. What gives? Well, when asked what they specifically missed about East Germany, very few respondents actually said the economic system, the communist government, or the Stasi turning everyone into paranoid freaks spying on their neighbours. What they missed the most was the school system, the unique food, the public art, the idea that they were all working towards a common goal.
Base security. Yes! This is... Yes!
Even if that goal wasn't actually getting any closer. They miss how simpler everything was back then. East Germans enjoy the aesthetics of the past, but most of them recognize...
Okay. I think I don't think it's the aesthetics, especially when we look at that social security number, right? People, right? There's that feeling of something underneath you should you fail, right? Should something just go wrong, because things are bound wrong. It just happens. There should be a safety net underneath you, catch you, so that you are not then permanently fucked over for the rest of your life, as what happens far too often in our society, our modern society. Right? Like, all it takes is, like, I've known, like, think about, right, like, if you had not received an education, let's say you had either, whatever happened, your parents were not there for you, whether they abandoned you, or they died young, or they just did not teach you certain things. there should be a safety net for you for when you are an adult, and so that you're not on the streets, right? Like that just should be the bare fucking minimum, but it's not.
Their lives are better today. I think that's at the core of this mindset, from the hyper-conservatives demanding a return to arranged marriages to your grandma sharing Facebook posts about phone boxes. Modern life can seem a little vegetarian, somewhat bland. Everything from buildings to post boxes have been simplified.
Okay, but the buildings do suck. Like, let's be real here. Our modern buildings are kind of fucking ugly.
Removing some of the richness from the tapestry of everyday life. When everything can be bought online and everyone can be contacted at an arm's reach, what reason do you have to go to socialise at the pub, gossip with the greengrocer, or go outside at all? When consuming media online can replace all other hobbies, what reason do you have to develop into an interesting person? Naturally, this makes people very lonely and very bitter. It's easy to look back and think people were happier and more sociable in days gone by. How we can undo this is beyond the scope of this video, so I'll leave you with an extract from the Japanese book Hagakure. The narrative follows a young warrior born into an era of peace, born decades after the last great wars between the samurai. Plagued by boredom, he yearns for a return to conflict, solely to provide purpose in his life. It is said that what is called the spirit of an age is something to which one cannot return. That this spirit gradually dissipates is due to the world coming to an end. For this reason, although one would like to change today's world back to the spirit of 100 years or more ago, it cannot be done. Therefore, it is important to make the best out of every generation.
And that was the myth of the 1950s. This was a fantastic video. Damn, I yapped a lot. Let me know. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.